favorite conference. Can I just tell y'all that? That says a lot. Y'all are amazing. Anyway, I'm Molly Fortune. I'm with the SC250, and I'm going to be your lead flight attendant for the next 24 hours. Heather Hawkins, who's our grant manager, is backing us up here with technology, and Mike and Tyler from SC250 also will be running around. If you need anything, let them know. I will say that they are also going to have microphones, so if you have questions, please wait for the microphone just so everyone can hear. And speaking of microphone, Elmore said he will slash your tires if you don't talk loudly into the microphone. I heard that straight from him, so make sure that you are talking loudly into the microphone. That's gross. Anyway, dinner will be at 6 o'clock back here in this fabulous space. Thank you to our refreshment ladies and gentlemen back there. They're going to keep us in coffee and so we're always grateful for them to be here. Restrooms are through that door or that door, this side of the aircraft, and they are around the corner. There are no slides that you have to jump down, so it's a very nice little easy walk there. I wanted to take a minute. I was thinking about this last night. This is our first symposium without two major figures. We lost George 3 years ago, and just in 12 months, we've lost two of our large pillars as well. Both Doug Bostic and Charles Baxley have passed, and a lot of times people say, well, those are big shoes that we're all going to have to fill, or somebody's going to have to fill. I've often in my career said, you know what, I brought my own shoes. Well, we bring our own shoes to this conversation, and we just put them right next to them. But I think a better analogy is the two of them were amazing storytellers. It was a wonderful journey to be with Charles in the car as we were traveling around the state, and just the way he wove his stories into bringing out the history, but bringing in the modern day. And then Doug Bostic, when he would talk about these battlefields, again, he would sit up here and just weave these wonderful stories. And those stories made this wonderful blanket or tapestry fabric that would surround us when we came to events like this. And as I look out over the group here, there are no shoes to fill, but we have become part of that tapestry, the fabric. We are that lasts from those stories that they gave us and the research that they did and the way that we have elevated South Carolina as we talk about the revolution and our wonderful characters. And we are part of that. So while those shoes are not going to be filled, we must carry on with the weaving of that fabric and the stories that we have to carry forward. So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to this group for welcoming SC250 in, me, Heather, Tyler, Mike, and Will, our chairman, is back there as well. It's a new story. And we will pick that up and we will continue to weave. And in weaving, we're going to start, and I'm excited about Tom Elmore, who I just recently met. And he's going to talk about Francis Marion, a biographical history. He actually had to change it. This was going to be about Thomas Sumter until about 15 minutes ago when he learned this was the Francis Marion Symposium. So we'll see how well he does in pivoting, because that's what we do so well. But if you have not seen some of the other pieces of work that he has done, please make sure you make your way to the back. And with that, Tom, it's all you. Remember, if you don't want your tires slashed, draw close.
Don't worry. My wife says projecting is not one of my issues. I'm glad to be here. I've been wanting to come to the symposium for years. Francis Marion has been a hero of mine. Ever since, I guess, in the late 60s, my parents took me in Charleston to the old museum. You might remember it near the Ashley River that was being held up by termites holding hands. There was a diorama of Princess Marion, and I just said, that's a swamp fox, and that just clicked in my brain. And I think over the years, even in adulthood, I think I've gotten books about Marion on at least 3 or 4 Christmases. Now, so those of you who are familiar with my work in the past, I'm known primarily as a Civil War historian, but I've always loved the Revolution and loved Marion. Well, about flash forward 2020, COVID, nothing's going on. I'm trying to think, I need to do something. And then it hit me. I do book reviews for a couple of magazines. I've also done some film history and criticism for our online site. And I looked at all my books about Marion, and I said, why don't I combine all these backgrounds I have and my love of Marion and come up with a program, and this is what you're going to see. Now, one thing, this picture is my personal favorite. I know it's historically inaccurate, but this is how I envisioned Marion when I was a young child. A young, dashing man with flowing hair, galloping through the swamps, behind the bridge. I mean, it's not completely inaccurate. I mean, the helmet's correct, and he's wearing a colonel uniform, and Marion always saw himself as a colonel and not a militiaman, but pretty much everything else about it is wrong, including the coloring. He wore a blue uniform, but we all know it was with red trim. There's been basically, I'm going to be talking about 7 major books that have come out about Marion over the last 200 years, in every century since he. But first, let's talk about what we can establish as absolute fact. He was born around 1732 in Berkeley County. He was a Huguenot ancestry, semi-illiterate, but wrote excellent reports. Gained experience during the Cherokee War. He did not marry until after the American Revolution. And I'm going to talk about how that has affected some of the scholarship on him. Had no children, direct descendants, wrote no memoirs, and he died in 1795. Now, the first biography, I use this term very loosely, was published in 1805. It was credited to Pierre Horry, Marion's close friend and second in command, who in turn but he was not satisfied with his manuscript, so he handed it over to this guy, Parson Weems. That name sounds familiar? Well, it should. He is the guy that gives the story of George Washington and the cherry tree. Also gives the story of George Washington throwing the silver dollar across the Potomac. Not exactly the most reliable person. So Weems took the book, basically rewrote it, and Horry basically, when he looked at it, probably said the 1800 version of WTF. One of the things that Weems did is he highlights New Allen. Kind of meant like Marion's equivalent of Sherwood Forest or Batman's Batcave, where in the middle of the night men would spring out and attack. Well, that is New Allen. Of course, famous portrait of Marion crossing. Very inaccessible, and the alley is very prone to flooding even to this day. So it really is not a very tactical spot. He was certainly in the vicinity of Snow Allen, but never really there. Some recent scholarship, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the program. And then, of course, the most famous one, his version of the cherry tree, Marion, the potato supper. We all know the story. A British officer came to Marion's camp to arrange a POW exchange. Saw that they were eating nothing but sweet potatoes and was told that the dinner was a little bit bigger than usual because they had guests. And he went back to Charleston and resigned his commission, saying there's no way we can defeat these men. Great story, never happened. But it does have one bit of value. The painter, John Blake White, who painted in 1836, he was the only artist to ever do a picture of Marion who actually saw the general. Every illustration except for this one was done by people using their imagination or was printed and or made after Marion's death. The thing about that stands out to me the most is the nose, but again, he looks too young. I mean, he would have been in his 40s when he was doing this. Also looks kind of feminine to me, but at least they have him in a common uniform. Now, I found this recently in the papers of Dr. Robert Bass at the South Carolina Library. And the first thing that struck me, it looks a lot like the image that they have right there in the back of that painting. that the Francis Marion papers have to come up with a conceptual idea of what Marion looked like. And when I saw that, I said, man, that is very much alike. And that was made 7 decades ago. So, the next person who wrote a book is Judge William Dothan James, who I could not find a picture of. First published in 1821. He joined Marion's band at 15. His father was a major under Marion. He's the only person other than Ori. I should have mentioned too, I shall talk about it in a second, to have a written biography of the general and contain the only detailed first-person description of the swamp fox. But it's flawed. The fog of memory is definitely there. Some events are out of sequence. And then there's one other glaring error too I'm going to point out in a second. You can read there, rather below middle stature of men, lean and swarthy, body well set, but his knee ankles badly formed, and he still lived upon one leg, which of course, he fell out of a window and broke his ankle. Counter is remarkably steady, his nose was aquiline, his chin projecting, his forehead was large and high, his eyes black and piercing. He was now 48 years of age, but still, even at this age, his frame was capable of enduring fatigue and every precipitation necessary for a partisan. His wisdom and patriotism will be his first pictures. The thing, though, in this description that really gets, that I disagree with, a crimson jacket. Yeah, that's accurate, but, again, they wore blue, second South Carolina wore blue coats with red trim. I think he may have gotten the colors backed up and mixed up with this. Then we have the one, William Gilmore Simms, published in 1844. That's the man himself. He was probably the leading man of words here in South Carolina. Before the Civil War, he wrote over 70 volumes of poetry, essays, oratory, novels, poetry, book reviews, and history. Among his admirers was Edgar Allan Poe, Henry Thoreau, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. In fact, he corresponded with them. He had a large collection of original documents from the American Revolution. Mercifully and thankfully for all of us, he had a lot of them published before the Civil War because they went up in flames when Sherman came to town. Allegedly, Ori's original manuscript was a part of the collection. He also supposedly had an unwritten short story by Edgar Allan Poe and a sketch of the Battle of Sullivan's Island drawn by an eyewitness. Again, we lost. Many recent scholars characterize him as the man who popularized the term swamp fox. And, as many of you know, there's been recent someone did some scholarship about 5-10 years ago and could not find any contemporary records of anyone calling Francis Marion the swamp fox in Marion's lifetime. And then there's some debate if that was an insult or a compliment, But yeah, the same feeling is now, it wasn't, but Simms to that, and he also enhanced the legend of Snow Island as well. But for decades, this book was considered the standard biography of Marion. Now, Simms set out to correct Z's claim, Weems's book, but he kept a lot of Weems in there. Supposedly, too, he had Ori's original manuscript, which, of course, we lost in the fire. Now, I've been told, but and I'm not 100% certain of this, that there is a copy that Ori had of Weems's book, on which Ori wrote notations in it. But that's probably about as close as we'll ever see to the original manuscript. Despite Ori's of all these faults, it was considered the standard work on Francis Marion for over a century. And if you look at a lot of history books written before the 1950s, a lot of the same legends and tall tales that Weems and Simms put in their books made their way into standard history texts. Now, Frankie goes to Hollywood. The Swamp Fox, 1914. How many of you knew there was a silent film about Marion? Fortunately, this film is lost. It was made by the Edison Trust. This is about all that survives of its 3 stills. You can go to the Internet Movie Database website, and it has a very detailed description of the plot of the movie. And yes, it has a love story. One thing I particularly look at this picture, Gasson flag. Second South Carolina never carried a Gasson flag to the best of my knowledge. And of course, the tricorn hat. Don't you just love the size of those emblems? This guy, Guy Coombs, who played Marion, definitely got the nose. Coombs' career in Hollywood was short-lived, about 10, 20 years. He gave up acting to become a real estate broker in Florida and was very successful at it. All right, he goes back to Hollywood again in 1955 with the Cavalcade of America, the Swamp Fox on CBS. Hans Conrad, very popular character actor, starred in numerous, guest starred in numerous sitcoms, had a recurring role in the Danny Thomas Show, Making Up Your Day, played Marion. Sadly, this is lost, and other than the fact it existed and Conrad was in it, we don't know much about it. Conrad probably, I think, actually made a pretty good resemblance to his picture, especially the nose and the forehead. I think he was a pretty good choice. The only problem is, when I think of Hans Conrad, I think of Captain Hook or Snap the Whiplash. Because he voiced them, and I doubt seriously Marion ever sounded like them. I have asked a number of people if there's any record of what Marion sounded like. I'm sure someone one day is going to say, is there any audio recording film footage? I'm not making this up. Someone I know who's connected to Gettysburg told me they were asked by a TV station this year if there was any film footage or audio recordings of Lincoln giving a Gettysburg address. No joke. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say that Marion probably sounds something like a cross between the Charleston accent, sort of like what Fritz Hollings used to have, and maybe a little bit of Cajun, since after all he was a French Huguenot ancestry. But that's only a guess. We'll never know for sure probably. Now, we get the first real, I consider the first real biography of Marion. Robert E. Bass is the Swamp Fox. First published in 1959, and for the next 2 or 3 decades, there was not a public school or public library in South Carolina or a bookstore in South Carolina that didn't have a copy of this. And of course, one thing they helped them do was in the 1970s, Sandpiper Press. You know, some of you might remember that magazine. They got the rights to the novel and they advertised it heavily, since a novel book, in their magazine. Bass, that's the man. He was the lead expert in South Carolina in the Revolution. Wrote books about Thomas Sumter, Banshee of Charlton, Siege of 96, and was inducted to South Carolina Hall of Fame. Bass's book was at the time the most accurate book written about Marion, although some scholars have since taken some liberties with it. But the one thing about Bass's book is, and this is one of the books that got Christmas, in fact, is the way he wrote it. It's very entertaining, very fast-paced. It's more like a narrative or a story than it is a straight Ben Stein type talking. So even though I know it's not the best, I still have a soft spot for it. And then in part also because Frankie went back to Hollywood for a 3rd time. Robin Hood, the American Revolution. Walt Disney, the Swamp Fox. 8 episodes. From 59 to 61, part of the Walt Disney Presents anthology on ABC, later rebroadcast in the 80s and the 90s on the Disney Channel and in syndication. Or the Disney Afternoon, they called it, in syndication. Based on the Swamp Fox by Robert E. Bass, that's in the credits. But if you watch the show, it's more like Hearts and Wings and maybe a little bit of William Gilmore Sims. One other thing that you forgot to mention about Sims. Sims is very wordy. He takes a whole page to say what I would say in a paragraph, doesn't you? Disney wrote this letter to Bass, December 16, 1959. By the way, notice the signature there. That doesn't look like what you see on Walt Disney merchandise, does it? But that is Walt's actual signature. I'm happy to have your note, and now I have to back up why this note is important. I have suspected for years that the series was based primarily on Parson Weems and William Gilmore Sims, and that they bought the rights to Bass books basically to avoid a plagiarism lawsuit to cover their legal standing. And this letter kind of confirms my suspicions. I'm happy to have your note, which I don't know what to say. I would love to see it, and know that you're pleased with our efforts on the Swamp Fox. In producing programs for the Bass television audience, we are more or less compelled to take certain liberties and attempt to please them. However, we have tried to be as factual as we could with respect to historical events, and to that end, we did a great deal of research on Francis Marion. Needless to say, your book has been of much help to us. I read that as saying, yeah, we were doing some stuff before we got your book. Yeah. By the way, I have a copy of the entire letter back in the back if anybody would like to see it after the program's over. The Symp.1st TV show owes its life to this guy who lived several decades after Marion, Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett was the first major television phenomenon. Not only a major ratings hit, but a merchandise hit. Stores could not keep Coonskin cats on the shelves. They were selling so fast. Anything with Davy Crockett's name flew off, went crazy. And I suspect there was a ton of kids who went as Davy Crockett for Halloween that year. So Disney was always, for years, just trying to find another Davy Crockett. He also was a lover of American history, and he thought Marion might fit the bill. Although in some of the early PR material that I've seen, they claimed it had nothing to do with Davy Crockett, but look here, a successor of Davy Crockett's coat-getting cap. And you Davy Crockett said, yeah, Davy Crockett. Now, I like this. The Scarlet Pimpernel of the South, I've never heard that. Of course, I never heard the Robin Hood of the American Revolution, but this one gets the cake. Move over, Davy. Looks like there'll be room for the Swamper, too. Has anyone in this room ever heard him called the Swamper? I sure haven't until I saw this a couple of months ago. This was the conceptual piece they have. I really like this drawing. And of course, you see that hat. Notice the hat is the most distinct thing. And this is what they said in the press release about the hat. Carefully tailored by Hollywood hat specialists in calf leather and felt. And this is Leslie Nelson. Anyone wearing such a hat would feel rather brave, or perhaps rather silly. I don't think there's any middle ground. Leslie Nelson was Marion. Someone recently made a comment that I liked. He said he would have been better suited to play Sumter. Not really that. Now this one gets me is the costumes. Again, bluff, not red. And not wearing the helmet, but a trigorn hat. Then look over here. You got a trigorn hat, you got the crescent moon there. Send the crescent moon down that one too. But here's the main thing. Marion is presented as an active duty colonial officer in the program. If he had been captured dressed like that, he would have been tried, convicted, and hung as a spy under accepted rules of warfare because he was dressed he was an active duty officer in civilian clothes. Which, I guess I can let that one little detail slide, or can I? John Sutton played Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Charlton. At least he was wearing a green coat, unlike somebody else. Tim Constantine, who appeared in a number of Mickey Mouse shorts, played Marion's nephew, Gabriel. Myron Headley was pure O'Reilly, and I have to give it a little bit of a resemblance. And Richard Urban as Sergeant Jasper, who, of course, at the time of the events in the Symp.1st series, had been dead in reality for several months. And then Joy Page as Mary Queen. Does that not look like Elsa from Frozen? I wonder if they went back and looked at this and said, oh, we're going to make her Elsa. That would be really interesting to find out. But one of the things you'll note, a lot of the actors involved in this, and people even behind the camera, were veterans of Westerns. Slim Pickens even appeared in a couple episodes. And pretty much it played up like a Western. There's a scene I could not find where Tarleton is chasing Marion through what's supposed to be the low country of South Carolina, and there's mountains in the background. I'm still looking for those mountains. Anyone knows where I can find them, please let me know. But to prove my point, the set they used in Charleston was used for Zorro, Darby O'Gill, the Little People, and the Westerns. Dempsey got a lot of mileage out of that set. Unfortunately, it's now a parking lot. And then, of course, a song we all know and love. that. There are people who actually believe that song is from the American Revolution. There are also people who believe the Liberty. My high school history teacher, AP History, thought that the Liberty Tree song featuring Johnny Germain was also from the American Revolution. They're not. They're both written in the 50s. 1950s, that is. Disney was a master of merchandising, as we mentioned. You could get the Swamp Fox coloring book, the Swamp Fox comic book, I actually have a copy, and then this little booklet that contained a little record that on which you could play the same song for the Swamp Fox with and torture your parents. And there was also the Swamp Fox board game. Yeah. But the piece of resistance, the Swamp Fox pistol, a $1 value for only 50 cents and 2 Canada Dry bottle caps, which made you still were paying $1 plus postage and handling. I had tried to find out if look online to find one, see how much they're worth today at a collector's market. I cannot. However, I did find the banners for sale on eBay for a combined $100 if anyone's interested. Yeah. Now, Disney originally was going to do 12 episodes, but he wound up doing only 8. And part of it it's also for that letter. 2 of the Swamp Fox programs shown in Canada were canceled out by the Canadian Broadcast Company. Because a group of left-wing Tories didn't build Canadians to find out how the American Revolution came out. The leader of the Tories was this guy, the brother of Leslie Nielsen. Wouldn't you love to have been at a family of a union with those two? He introduced a bill in the Canadian Parliament that would ban any TV program that put the British government or the British Army in a bad light. And so Disney had to pull the plug prematurely. Did not really give a complete end to it. A couple other programs he also had to cut short. Some of you might remember Dr. Sin, the Scarecrow, Rodney Marsh. He had planned on doing more episodes of that. Again, had to put the kibosh. Then unfortunately lose the revenue. The first 3 episodes were released on limited edition, 125 DVDs in 2005, part of the Disney Treasure series. And this series was probably the best series that Disney ever put on DVD. A lot of rare and hard to find items were on there, and they stopped it. There's a lot of people, self-included, who wish they could resume it because there's a lot of material they still haven't put out yet, and a lot of it's still not on Disney Plus. Like I said, the Swamp Fox series has never been on Disney Plus, nor has Johnny Germain. I would like, with 250 coming out, would it make sense to put both of those out on DVD or Disney Plus? But I work for Disney, so I doubt they'll listen to me. All right, moving right along. The great South Carolina Tricentennial, 1970, followed by the American Revolution, Bicentennial, 1976. A little bit of background on the Tricentennial Commission. In 1960, World Expos were the rage. You had one in Seattle, New York, 64, 67, Montreal, 68, San Antonio. So South Carolina said, hey, let's get in on this too. So they decided we'll have not 1, not 2, but 3 expos in South Carolina. So they did one in Charleston, which is now Charlestown Landing. They did one in Columbia where they have the Preston houses that sort of kind of morphed into the State Museum. And then one on Roper Mountain outside Greenville, which was never complete. For a lot of people, the Tricentennial Commission is a 4-letter word. And that's why Mama taught me, you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. They did, however, partner with USC Press, come up with a series of books, little booklets, about South Carolina history. One of them was the Partisan War. It was written by this man, Dr. Russell S. Wigley, and he taught Temple, a well-respected writer on World War II and the Civil War. This was the only book on the American Revolution. And what really got it, and kind of made a lot of people angry, is he compared in his book, he compared the tactics of Marion, Sumter, and Pickens that were used by Mao, Castro, and other communist guerrilla fighters like the Viet Cong. Keep in mind, South Carolina probably supported the Vietnam War more than most states in the country did. General Westmoreland, the commander of troops in Vietnam, was from South Carolina. book went over like a lead balloon. Of course, I've asked the question, first of all, why was he chosen? The only good reason I could think of, they want someone from an outside perspective. Because there were a number of great writers here in the States, still are, about the American Revolution. But why did you choose someone who never wrote about the American Revolution? Certainly, they could have found someone. And then to add insult to injury, I got this. Yeah, I was watching an episode of Matches, one of the ones with Henry Blake and Trapper John, and they're having staff meeting, and they're doing the role, and it's revealed that Burns' full name is Francis Marion Burns. I about fell on my chair. But he does have the same, but his nose is kind of like Marion's. The only book, really, this period was 73, Francis Marion, The Swamp Fox, by Hugh F. Rankin. I have to tell you, I was going through this program with my wife, and she said, you know, have you seen about Rudolph? I said, huh? She said, Rankin Bass. Dr. Bass, Dr. Rankin Bass, they were the people who did all those Christmas specials, like Rudolph and Frosty. So I said, I never saw it that way. I said, okay, I'm going to share that story. He was known for his writings on the American Revolution and North Carolina colonial history. It's the only major work done on Marion during this period. It's a very good book. It corrected a lot. It's considered to be better factually than Bass's book. The only problem I have with this book is the writing is dry. It's pretty much, you know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I said, I don't want to make it sound too bad, chase me away, because it is good. But one of the things I do as a book reviewer is I look at the readability. Is it something that is entertaining, not only informative and accurate, but entertaining? It kind of falls short on that side. And then Humphrey Goes Hollywood one last time today. Mel Gibson as Benjamin Martin in The Patriot. Everybody got that? All right, now for the good stuff. John Oler, The Swamp Fox, 2016. That's a gentleman. He's an Ohio-born lawyer turned writer who specializes in biographies and true crimes. My wife loves watching true crime shows on Discovery, which makes me worry sometimes. The first major biography of Marion in 73 included a lot of research. Of course, you think about it, 2-3 decades have passed, a lot of new information had come to light. A lot of archaeology had been done on some of the sites, and more updated, correct, the legend. It examined previous biographies and point out the strengths and weaknesses. I'll say this, if you are ever going to buy just one book about Francis Marion, this is the book to buy. It is that good. And I hope that someday somebody will write an even better book. Because we're still learning, of course, the Marion papers are finding all kinds of documents. And I'm sure there's still a lot left to discover about Marion. Stephen, then we have this book, Francis Marion's New Island Community by Stephen Smith. That's him in the yellow sweatshirt. That's the only picture I could find of him online. I've actually heard him speak. He's a real nice guy, by the way. He was with the South Carolina Institute of Archaeology for a long time. And it's not a biography of Marion per se. It's more an examination of the Snow Island community, a lot of demographics and statistical information. One of the things he points out is it was a perfect place for Marion because Snow Island was, the community was isolated, far from the crowds, never hit by the British, and they're very patriotic. So it was a perfect place for Marion to have a base operation, get supplies, etc., etc. And include recent archaeology discoveries. Now, one of the things is, talk about Snow Island. One of the things they have reached a conclusion. They have done years and years of archaeology on Snow Island, and they have yet to find any evidence that Marion ever camped there. Now, to be fair, like I said, the river floods, it could wash stuff away. However, what they believe is that people use Snow Island sort of like in a general term, like I live near Irma, South Carolina. I'm closer to Irma than I am to Columbia. But I tell people I'm from Columbia. Another example is someone in Burbank, California might say, I live in Hollywood or I might live in LA. That's sort of the same kind of mindset. But anyway, a very good book, very good companion book to Aller's book. It's a little bit of dry reading if you're not a historian or a scholar, but excellent book. I recommend it highly. And then this book has just come out recently. I've not had a chance to read it. I'm looking forward to it. It's kind of a series of books, kind of continue a trend I've seen in the last couple of decades, where people have taken historical figures and written books about leadership skills from them. I've seen them from Genghis Khan to Robert Lee. I even seen one from Captain John Luke Picard. So I said that is on my to-read list, but I just wanted to mention it out there. My conclusions. Given Marion's importance, it's surprising that more books have not been written about him, especially during South Carolina's tricentennial and the U.S. bicentennial. In fact, kind of what was really insulting to me, they didn't even issue a postage stamp during the bicentennial. All they did was a little prepaid posted postcard with a picture of Marion crossing the PD, the famous portrait. Wartime exploits would make for a good action film, battle embellishments, or revisions. However, the lack of a love interest, which is why at least 3 of the 4 productions have given a love interest to add to it. Biographies, but here, same keep in mind, biographies, movies, TV shows, and I'll even say monuments, are often much a reflection of the times that they were made, and tell more, sometimes even tell us more about the times they were made than they are about the subject matter that they're covering. And that's, for now, that's the end. Although hopefully I've got a feeling we'll see more down the road. And maybe 25 years from now, if I'm still around, I can update the program for y'all. Does anybody have any questions this time? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I've read several of those, but there's another one I've read, and the authors were Symp.1st. Did you ever run across that?
I have not run across that one. Those were the ones that I knew. The ones I showed are the ones that have pretty much been the major ones, the ones that sort of gotten most of the attention over the years. There's a children's book about Marion that I did not include too.
Someone asked me to repeat the question, and I asked about a book about Francis Marion written by Samuel and Beryl Epstein. So,
yeah, I own the book. It's basically written for teenagers, and it was part of a series of books written for young people, not little kids, but older kids. And it's a very well written book, and nice little illustrations, and it's a good introduction to Francis Marion. It's been a while since I read it, but it was part of I forget the name of the series.
It wasn't talking about 1920s?
No, it came out right about the same time as Walt Disney's productions in the 1950s.
Yeah, I think I got the book you talked about. I didn't include it because it's not, straightforward biography. There's also another book that came out about 100 years ago that was part of a young readers series. Young boys who are fighting with the smallpox. Again, that's fiction. So I kind of steer away from fiction. Although we can argue that Parks and Wings was fiction, but that's another story.
If I could just further comment, there's a number of books that were written in the turn of the century. The kind of like the Molly Drew series, the Liberty Boys with Harry Lee.
Yeah, that was the series I was thinking of, the Liberty Boys, and then the Boy Scouts had their own Every Boy's Library series too.
There was a historical novel which was pretty good called Francis Marion, Knight of the Revolution, which is a very readable book, and I think it came out probably in the 50s also. By the way, on Peter Ory's book is with his notations. It's in the Carolina Library.
Good. Glad. Yeah. By the way, the Carolinas have